Thank you. Hi and welcome everybody today to today's meeting of Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Board. Before we do the introductions, just a quick note to fellow members and all on the call. If you're not speaking, please can you mute your microphones, please? Okay, I'll just pass you over to Lindsay to do a roll call. Lindsay, thank you.
Hiya. Welcome everybody. A roll call of people at the meeting. For councillors, I've got Councillor Lind, who's the chair, Councillor Cuss, who's the vice chair, Councillor Heselgrave, Councillor McChrystal, Councillor Patterson and Councillor Testro. We have the Youth Mayor, Connie Spencer, and the Deputy Youth Mayor, Priya Gill, also on the call. Co-opted members of the board, Stephen Grundy and Chris Holz are present, and the officers presenting tonight are Pauline Anderson, Director of Learning Skills, Graham Ferguson, Head Teacher of Virtual School, Sue Ann Lim, who's the Director of Early Years and Safeguarding, and Gamal Nizar, who's the Director of Commissioning for Children and Young People. And that's everybody, I think.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is there any apologies?
Two apologies. One from Andy Smith, who's the Strategic Director of People Services, and Tracy Churchill, who's the Catholic Diocese Board member.
Thank you, Lindsay. No late items to be introduced by myself today. Is there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Okay, so can we move on now then to item 4, to agree that the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of December are true and accurate. Are we all in agreement? Have we all had a look at the minutes? We're all happy with that? Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
If you're not, please speak now. No? Okay, so we're all happy to pass that, are we? And no objections? No. Okay, moving on then to item 5, which is the report on the work for the virtual school for looked after children. I'll pass you now to Graham Ferguson. Graham?
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to run through the report which you have circulated in with the papers. I think the first thing to say is that this is a quite unusual report from the virtual school, and the reason for that's outlined in 1.1 in that all the exams and assessments, as you will know, were cancelled last year. So there are no examination results from primary or secondary schools. But what I've done in this report is I've taken the opportunity just to run through and give the board an overview of what the virtual school does in a more broad and general a scope of what we do, really. So the role of the virtual school, we've got 3 core functions. One of those is to monitor and track the educational progress and achievement of every looked after pupil that Derby City is responsible for. 35% of the pupils within the virtual school are in Derby City schools. 65% of them are in schools outside of Derby City. Currently, there are 439 pupils in virtual school. So we support youngsters not only in Derby schools, but we've got youngsters in Scotland and Wales and right down to the south coast of England. So we monitor and track that educational progress and achievement, and we support challenge schools where the provision's not good enough or where aspirations are not high enough, and we promote inclusion, so we look to raise the attendance and reduce exclusions of young people or pupils in schools. The virtual school works in partnership with a range of professionals, both in schools and staff that we commission with specific expertise, and I'll come to some of those in a minute. But crucially, we work alongside not only the schools, social workers and carers, to make sure that our most vulnerable children can access the education that they that they deserve and are entitled to. And we do that on a case-by-case basis to make sure that youngsters are engaged in their learning as much as possible. So the virtual school team, I'm the head teacher of the virtual school. We have 3.5 full-time equivalent specialist education officers. So we've got 5 members of staff who work as education officers, and we have a 0.5 administrative support, and we have 1 full-time apprentice who has been so good. She started off as an intermediate apprentice, but she was so good we've kept her on, and she's now doing her advanced apprenticeship with us, which is great. And we do commission a range of other staff to support the virtual school, and these include education psychologists, speech and language specialists, mentors, teaching staff in schools, and teaching assistant staff in schools as well. One of the things we've done over the last year is we have made sure that each specialist education officer has a caseload which is aligned to the different social care teams across the city. And that's led to a much closer cross-team working between the virtual school and social care. And it's a similar thing with the education psychologists. We've got a specific education psychologist member of staff working alongside a member of staff in the virtual school team, and therefore the social work team as well. So moving on to page 3 of the report, this is just a very quick outline of some of the activities which support young people to achieve better outcomes, both in school and in their wider lives. One of the most important things we've done in terms of improving the outcomes, the educational outcomes, is we have done some targeted one-to-one support for Year 6 pupils. So we've been able to identify when a Year 6 pupil hasn't quite been at the national expectation at the start of Year 6. And we've been able to put in one-to-one support to specifically target areas where they need some extra support to help them meet the national standard. Obviously, I'm talking about the previous academic year, and we haven't been able to do that this year because of COVID, but that has really helped to improve the headline figures in terms of our attainment and progress. Second thing there is we've commissioned 1.2 full-time equivalent members of staff from Kingsmead Special School, and they've been specifically commissioned to work with youngsters who are in the Derby City children's homes. Ever since I've been virtual head, and that's almost now 5 years, there has been this nagging issue where we've got youngsters in the care homes who have been disengaged with their learning and education. And this is an attempt to provide an appropriate supportive member of staff specifically for young people who are having difficulty getting themselves to school or accessing school. And again, with COVID, it's been slightly problematic, but despite COVID, we have had some real success and improved engagement through putting those 2 members of staff, or commissioning those 2 members of staff. And mentoring support for our most disengaged. Again, this is the 3rd year we have had working with Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm provides some mentors to our most disengaged young people. And again, it's hard work, but we have made some real inroads in terms of engaging some of our most disengaged. Creative mentoring is another stream of mentoring support that we offer. We work with the Derby City Cultural Education Partnership, which is led by Derby Theatre, and we offer 6-week blocks of mentoring support to young people who are looked after, who have a creative interest, So we work with people who not only are interested in theatre work, but modelling, dance, playing an instrument. So we have a bank of creative mentors which we can draw upon. Speech and language support. What we find, or what we have found with some of the youngsters who come into the virtual school at a very young age, is they have very low levels of literacy. And if that's not addressed early, they have great difficulty in accessing the curriculum as they move through school. So very much an early intervention programme where we put speech and language specialists in to really improve the literacy skills of some of those youngsters. We've talked a bit about education psychology support, and again, that education psychology support not only supports the youngster, but probably more importantly, the team of staff who are dealing in a day-to-day basis with the young person. So the education psychology support is really focused around the key staff members who are working with that young person. Seguridad, quite a strange name. It is Spanish, and you'll have to forgive me, but I can't remember what the Spanish for Seguridad is. But we have commissioned an organisation called Touchbase, who've done a very in-depth piece of support work for a youngster who is in one of our children's homes. This youngster was having great difficulty in maintaining her school place and was at risk of exclusion. So we commissioned Touchbase to do this in-depth piece of work. That involved going back to when the young person was born and creating a fact file for that young person. And what transpired was that this young person had had 48 significant relational traumas and known losses in their life. And this young person was 13. So for the first 13 years of their life, they tracked back and they documented those 48 significant relational traumas and losses that they'd had. And that gave the team around that young person a much clearer idea of what behaviours that young person was exhibiting. And basically what that young person was doing was they were looking to break down the relationship before that relationship was broken again as they would see it. So again, that was a trial piece of work. We will certainly be using that method or that approach in future. More generally, as a virtual school, we want to encourage reading. And with reading, we have in the past sent out reading book vouchers when the shops were open. But we've had to change our tack with that, and we've worked with procurement so that carers can request books and educational resources from Amazon. So what we do is we contact the carers. The carers speak with the people or the young person in their care. They choose books that they would like to read, and we send the books directly from Amazon to the carers or to the carers' home address. I think the real benefit of that has been that as a virtual school, we've actually seen what the young people are reading, and so we've had really positive feedback around that, which has been really encouraging. As we always do, we support educational provision where a pupil doesn't have a school place. So if a youngster has moved care placement, it sometimes takes a bit of time to get them into a new school. And certainly when they've got an education, health and care plan, we have to follow the statutory consultation process. So we do put one-to-one tutors in at that point. New this year, we have had over the half terms, as pre-COVID, over the half terms we have had a cookery school. So we had 3 or 4 youngsters who have enjoyed their day working with the YMCA in their catering kitchens, and they normally have a theme. around that. So they have had a curry theme, they have had a Mexican theme, and that's been just really great to see the youngsters enjoying doing that and picking up some life skills along the way. So how do we look to fund all that type of activity? The virtual school gets £2,345 per year pupil premium plus grant from the government. The majority of that is spent in schools to support targets that schools set the youngsters. And we do that through the PEP, which is the personal education plan. Every youngster has a personal education plan, which is a record of how the professionals around that youngster think the youngster is doing, and a record of their educational outcomes. Youngsters do have an input into that, and there is a pupil voice section on the PEP that we have. The PEP is electronic, so we have an electronic platform for that. During the lockdown periods, we have made that PEP a bit shorter to ease the pressure on staff, both in social care and in schools. And as we've all done, we've started to complete the majority of those PEPs virtually through video conferencing. And that has actually been a real benefit and has allowed my staff to attend more PEP meetings than they would normally attend because of the no travelling time. Each PEP is quality assured by the virtual school and feedback given. So we are looking to drive up the quality of the PEPs, and we have a specific quality assurance feedback page now on the PEP, which is good. In terms of support for remote learning, looked after children did benefit from the fact that DFE gave us 1,255 laptops for young people who were known to social care. So each looked after youngster, where it was appropriate, was offered a laptop for working at home. If they were in a Derby City school, that came from the DFE allocation. If they were outside of Derby, that laptop came from Pupil Premium Plus funding. We did encourage all looked after youngsters to be in school, but that was done on a case-by-case basis in terms of whether the youngster was vulnerable themselves to COVID or their carer was vulnerable, and whether other youngsters in the school, or sorry, in the carer's home were going to school, because we had issues where, or circumstances where a carer's birth children were at home, but the looked after youngster was also there, and it didn't seem fair that the looked after youngster had to go to school where all the other children in the home were still at home and learning at home. So it was done on a case by case basis. During lockdown 1, we had up to 40% of pupils attending school during the first lockdown. Lockdown 2 didn't affect schools as much, I guess, and we were up to 93% of youngsters attending school. And currently in lockdown 3, we're running at about 65% of looked after youngsters being in school. We try to support carers at home, and we purchased several licenses for a maths and an English resource. The maths resource was MathsWhiz. The reading one was something called Reading Wise. I think it's fair to say the MathsWhiz one was a bit more engaging than the Reading Wise one, and I think the learning from that is, and I think it's learning nationally, was that with home learning it is quite difficult for carers and for parents to keep the motivation going for youngsters through online learning. So with MathsWhiz and Reading Wise, we won't continue with those licenses now right across the virtual school, because a lot of schools now have geared themselves up with good online learning packages themselves, and carers would much rather them access what the school content is online rather than any additional licenses or products that we can provide. So although it was a good intention, the uptake and the use of, especially reading wise, wasn't great. MathsWiz was more promising, and we have actually bought 2 families specific licenses to carry on MathsWiz because their youngsters actually really enjoyed using it. So we didn't think it was fair just to cut those off. So we have bought those 2 specific families licenses to that. And when we come to attendance, meaningful reporting on attendance and exclusions over the last year isn't really isn't possible because of the pandemic. And as I've said, we do encourage youngsters to follow the national guidance to be in school because a place is available for them. But where there are well-reasoned arguments for the youngster not to be in school, we've given permission for them to work at home. So I think that's me. I'm happy to take any questions if people have questions.
All right, thank you, Graham. That was a very comprehensive report. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. There's some fantastic work going on here. I think we have a question from Councillor Heselgrave. Councillor Heselgrave?
Yes, good evening everyone. Thanks very much, Graham, for the report. Very comprehensive, and that gives a really good flavour of what you've been up to with our young people who are very disadvantaged in life, and you're doing your best to compensate that and help them get the best out of their time in school. You talked about the fact that they didn't have exams if they were in an exam year in secondary last year, but I think some of them may well have just got results anyway. Were you largely happy with any results that were given?
It was really interesting with the, well, I think most people will know the national conversation around exams and how people grade it. I think some of our youngsters really benefited from being teacher assessed, because some of our youngsters, because of the transition at the end of year 11, some of them don't get to exams and they drop out early. So in a normal year, they wouldn't have sat an exam and therefore wouldn't have got a result. But because they were teacher assessed, they at least got something. So I think there are swings and roundabouts. I think some of those youngsters benefited. I think some youngsters really pull the socks up and think, I do need to get my grade 4, grade 5 English and Maths. And some of those who would have worked really hard near the end may not have got the grade 4 or grade 5 because their teacher would have assessed them at grade 3. So I think there's swings and roundabouts. I think some of them benefited, some of them didn't. The same will be the case this year because Gavin Williamson still hasn't told us how they're going to be assessed this year. So because there aren't going to be any exams this year again. So we wait to see what the government are going to see.
And the other question, if you don't mind, Chair, it's just in relation. You've got an enormous catchment area. I think it's the whole of Great Britain. I don't think you have any in the north of Ireland placed.
No, we don't.
No. Right. So up and down the length of Great Britain, you have your pupils.
Yes.
Effectively. And I know we've had moves to try and get as many of our pupils back towards or get them nearer to Derby. Has that been helpful to you? I know that someone won't be able to be relocated because of the highly specialised institutional help that they need.
Definitely. Although I say there's 65% of our youngsters outside of Derby City, the majority of that 65 are either in Derbyshire, Staffordshire, Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire.
Oh, good.
Absolutely. So there is the vast majority near Derby. As you say, there's some specialist placements in Scotland and on the south coast where there are specific needs of the youngster, or there are specific reasons why a youngster needs to be that far away from Derby.
Okay, thank you very much, Graham.
Thank you, Councillor Heselgrave. Is there any other questions? No? No other questions? Okay, can we move on to the recommendations then in the report? So recommendations 2.1, are we happy with recognise and understand the role and range of activities which are undertaken by the virtual school in supporting improved outcomes? Are we all happy with that? Yes? No one's opposing, yep. So we'll take that then, that we're all in agreement. So moving on to the next item then. So next on the agenda is item 6. So that's Social Impact Bond Programme update on the STARS programme from Gamayol. Gamayol, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll run through the report and draw out headlines and background. So, Chair, the social impact bond kind of relates to the aspect of the local authorities working in partnership with Nottingham City and Nottinghamshire County Councils to deliver an evidence-based service that support children on the edge of care and in care, called STARS, supporting children and young people to achieve resilience. This is in the form of a social impact bond, which are a form of social investment increasingly used to fund service improvements involving local authorities, investors and providers. They also bring additional investment in interventions which would normally not be affordable in a local area. The interventions are holistic, providing wraparound tailored packages of flexible support for foster carers and the young person. 4.4 outlines the intervention support for young people who are either currently living in residential care, supporting them to step down to foster care, be currently living in foster care and at high risk of placement breakdown or at risk of entering residential care, and to support them remain in stable foster care. Or are looked after children by the local authority, and the local authority seeking to reunify with their birth family or primary carers, and finally a cohort of young people who are either defined as being on the edge of care, i.e. at the risk of being taken into care. 4.6 outlines investors fund the costs to deliver an improvement to a service, and then the local authority makes payment on a successful outcomes basis and payment by results model. 4.7, I won't run through, although the advantages there are outlined in terms of these additional interventions. 4.8 outlines the figures in effect for the different cohort of young people and the different numbers of children and young people for each cohort that we as an authority have put forward to work with in order to make referrals into the social impact board to work with those families. So social care commissioning and the social impact bond work hand in glove in order to make referrals and supporting interventions with providers. Financial value, financial section 7.1 outlines, as I outlined earlier, social investors provide upfront investment. Derby City Council is currently forecast spending is exceeding 8.5 million per annum on placement costs. The SIB model provides support and interventions to children to either prevent them from coming into local authority care or to stabilise their current placements from escalating into high cost complex placements. 7.3 outlines that as part of this model there are savings as well, in the sense of being able to safely step down children and young people from high cost placements when it's safe to do so. And 7.3 outlines savings that are tracked against the social impact model as far as the city is concerned. 7.5 outlines that this social impact bond is kind of on the back of a successful £3 million bid a couple of years ago across the three authorities for Life Chances lottery funding, which equates to about £1 million for each authority, which helps with the outcome payments, but also helps support the additional intervention investments to work with children and young people to help either stabilise placements or to step down where it's safe to do so. So Chair, there are the headlines. It was mobilised in October, and the recommendations are to note the performance of the STARS programme to date and to note the forecast savings that were already in MTFP processes over the last couple of years. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Gamal. It's lovely to see that service has continued throughout this pandemic, and that's really nice to see. So thank you for your report. Are there any questions from councillors? Questions?
If I may, Chair.
Councillor Hazelgrave, yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, Gamal. Thanks for your report. A very interesting way of funding and getting results for children who were just on the edge of coming into maybe really much more expensive care and help. So it's great if we can, the earlier the intervention, the better. We know that. And it's kind of payment by results. So presumably you have a set of criteria for each child, a set of measurable outcomes that could be evidenced, and then a tranche of the payment will be made, or the whole payment is made by the end result. I'm not sure which. That's just one part of my question.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So yes, there is. So the detail underneath the contracts is the payment by results kind of comes into fruition over a set period of time once, for example, a step down has stabilised. So there's evidence over a period of time, and then it trips into payment by results model in that. So you're absolutely right. It is over a set period of time once it's clear that there is stabilisation in that cohort that I've described, A, B, C or D. So it isn't a case of 1 week and payments start. It's not like that. There's a set period.
No. So there's a clear result, and it's over. There's some stability, shall we say?
Yeah, over a sustained period.
Yes, good. And the other thing, do we intend to have a kind of longitudinal study of these young people if they remain in Derby, so we can see that the investment has paid off long term, not in short term? I know people are volatile and they can remain volatile out during their teenage years and beyond. But I just wondered if there will be some kind of cost effectiveness long term view on this.
Yes, there will definitely. I think it'll be more strategic, Paul, because I think the Life Chances Fund and government departments are also looking at SIBs across the piece for some university research to say, does the model work in relation to investors, public sector, and that step down? So yes, and I think I'm pretty sure, I'm going back a couple of years, I think somewhere embedded in the contractual information is a research project for across this element, as well as a much more wider strategic one nationally linked to universities.
Well, if it's going down well, I hope it proves to be successful in Derby, and that the research bears out that it's a really good model to provide support to people at the earliest opportunity, and that the support's effective and helps them to get the best out of life and best out of school life.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions from councillors? Any more questions to anybody? No? Okay, so if we move on to the recommendations then, so recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Is board happy to note those recommendations? Take silence as all in agreement? Yeah, unless there's any objections. No objections. Okay.
Sure, it's toggling between different screens. I end up. I think they're fine as recommendations. I'll support them. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So we're moving on now then to the next item. Thank you, Gamal. So the next item, item 7 on the agenda, COVID remote learning. I believe Pauline Anderson and Simon Canal will be presenting this. Pauline, pass over to you.
Hi there. Yes,
hi,
Danielle.
Thank you.
Just so, not saying you want to see me actually, but here I am. Si's on his way. I've just texted him. Si Carnell is a leader at Derby County Community Trust, and is being commissioned by the Opportunity Area to do some work in this area. So there is a short covering report which you've had, which obviously doesn't give you a great deal of information, just raises the issue. But I have sent in advance a PowerPoint which I will now attempt to share. Now, it is not my strength sharing my desktop on Skype, I have to say. Can you see?
It's there. We can see it. It's fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's my best ever. That's the quickest I've ever done that. Normally, it's a nail biting thing, and I fail miserably. So you asked to talk about COVID remote learning, and of course it is a movable picture. So I have actually put February 2021 to be clear on this, because things are changing all the time. I thought I'd start with some of the Department for Education statistics which are on the DFE website, and they are monthly updates, and this is the 9th of February update on laptops and tablets progress data. So from that data we can see that Derby maintained school sector has received 2,642 laptops or tablets for disadvantaged children. Should be disadvantaged. So, you know, that not an insignificant number, and those have been received. But in addition to that, Academy Trusts are counted separately, and Academy Trusts have received a number of devices, but we can't calculate that as it's not available for the local area. You could go on to the website and look under some of the supplementary data that tells you how much an Academy Trust has had, but then you wouldn't be able to disentangle it if they've got schools in Nottingham or Oldham or Derbyshire, for example, Derby Diocesan Academy Trust. You'd just have the whole trust data, and we wouldn't know how many of those were actually for children in Derby, so it would be an impossible task. I did look into it. Also, devices continue to be delivered directly to schools and trusts. They're no longer coming through the council, so the position is changing daily. But I think that just gives you a bit of an overview. So we could guess it is likely to be in the region of, I'm going to guess around, you know, at least double that. If about half of the primary schools, for example, are academies, and most of our secondary schools are academies, it's at least double that, 2,642. In addition, the Department for Education has actually produced some guidance, and it's actually quite helpful, though a bit late in the day, just to bring your attention to the DFE guidance on reviewing your remote learning provision. And it's asking schools to look at the leadership in this area, remote education context, pupil engagement, curriculum planning and delivery, capacity and capability, communication, and of course safeguarding and well-being. I just thought that was quite a useful document, and for you to know that that's happening. And of course all these things weren't in place in the very first lockdown. So moving on, the key Si's just saying it's not letting him, and he's going to have to try something else, so he's trying to get in to the meeting. Apologies for that. So just to say that where we are at the moment, in addition to those initiatives, the Derby local context is that DCC has committed £250,000 to provide devices and connectivity for disadvantaged children. This hasn't been signed off yet, so this is a useful timing for the conversation, but 50,000 of this is being proposed to support children with special needs who may need modified equipment or software in working from home, and in fact, when schools return, I think there is a continued need to understand how we support homework as well as the threat of home learning in the future. DFE laptops have not been provided for infant-age children, 5 to 7-year-olds. That is a complete gap in national provision, and it is proposed, but they're not yet finalised, that we fill this gap. Now, we've done a calculation based on, rough calculation of how many children that would be, and it's about 750 children in Key Stage 1, between 5 and 7 years old, if we were to use the formula that we used for the other disadvantaged rollout. Other things are happening, and this is where I would bring Si in, but he is in the room now, which is great. So he's on the phone, but he would be able to come in. And I just draw your attention to the fact that E4E, which is now in my department, E4E are working with employers to collect and distribute second-hand equipment to schools. Rolls-Royce are promoting a drive with Marketing Derby to get more devices for schools. I'll come to Si in a minute and bring him in, but just to say that schools are continuing to loan their own equipment to families, and the New Communities team have access to tablets and online tuition for some families from the Roma community through a national charity that actually I'm involved in, and I thought we'd earmark some of that for Derby families, so we've been able to do that. So there's quite a lot happening in this area. I'd like to bring Si in now, because there's quite a significant commission from the opportunity area for Derby County Community Trust to do some work. Si, can you hear me? And would you like to just come in there and tell us a bit about your hubs, please?
No problem at all. Thanks for having me, and apologies for not being able to get on Skype for whatever reason. My Microsoft account really doesn't like Skype, but thanks for that, Pauline. So just to give you a bit of an update, really, there's two main projects which link into this in particular. One is a new commission, which is an inclusion piece of work, which we are delivering with a myriad of partners across the city, which, although it's an inclusion project, it's very much around managing exclusions, and digital and technology will be a key strand of that throughout. So how we engage with young people, both in school and out of school, both in terms of face-to-face and virtual. So technology is going to be absolutely key there. So this project and the project that Pauline is talking about is very, very important to that connectivity part and enabling young people, especially those with SEND, to engage in the program. So that's the first one. The second one is around the digital hub. So it's a £50,000 commission that we've been challenged with engaging young people in remote learning. And it's not about supplying them with IT and technology. What we found with a considerable amount of conversations that we've had with school leaders and parents is that technology isn't the answer to every single problem where it comes to remote learning. It's a significant issue, especially at Key Stage 1, but with some families, and especially those with English as an additional language, actually it's around the soft skills, the skills that they need to turn a laptop on, to be able to create a login, to go on to Teams if that's the platform that the lessons are being delivered from, or go on Zoom or whatever that may be. So what we plan to do with the digital hubs is where the investment comes from this program, and where we really need to put that resource into work with young people and their families to kind of build that infrastructure within communities. That's where these community hubs will be placed. Now, we've got a great track record with This is Derby of delivering community hubs, primarily physical activity hubs, whether that be at Normanton Park, Arboretum Park, the racecourse, or a variety of different facilities. And the plan is very much that whilst young people are engaged in physical activity sessions and engagement sessions, that we will be able to do some outreach work with families to help them with their skills. So actually, when they are given laptops or tablets or whatever pieces of technology they have, they can utilize them. I think that the challenge that we've got over the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks is that they'll probably be delivered in school sites, or on school sites, should I say, simply because of the lockdown restrictions. But hopefully with the announcements today, come April and May, we'll be able to do some face-to-face delivery. So really important that in both the inclusion piece of work and the digital hubs piece of work, that it's not duplicating existing work, that it fits seamlessly into the work that Pauline and her team are trying to do, and that it's locally led, through the local authority, through the schools, and respond to that local insight. So, Pauline, I think that's probably
thank you. Yes.
No,
that's really, really good. Thank you, and very helpful. And I think lots of these threads hadn't really come together, but I really feel now that all of these elements were in this list of other provision. We're all talking to each other now, and clearly we can really maximise the resource and optimise what we've got by working together. So I think the next steps are we're continuing to collect information from schools on families without equipment and connectivity, and we've got a list there, so we can be quite targeted. And if schools cost that up, if we were to prioritise the SEND and the Key Stage 1, and then there was still a resource left, we could then go to schools, the other lists from schools, and we've now begun to collect that from academy schools as well as from maintained schools. When at the time of writing this, we were calculating the number of disadvantaged children in the infant ages. I said we do have that rough guide around 750, but we haven't got a fixed calculation on that yet. But we are on with that with our data team. And clearly we're working, as Si is here to demonstrate, with other providers to ensure that the work is joined up. And we have a steering group which involves some of the people in this room, we've tried to make that as broad and as inclusive as possible. So the leader is on that, as myself, education people, Si, who's just been talking, and a number of people really who are interested in moving this forward, just so we just get rounded views and lots of questions. So I'll thank you for listening, and if you have any questions now, I'm more than happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you.
Right, there we are. Right, okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Pauline, and to Simon. It's great to see some fantastic work and co-production that's going on around trying to ensure that our children and young people in Derby City are getting the appropriate provision they need to be able to learn, no matter what the circumstances. That really is really good to see. Now, in relation to understanding the needs of children and young people in the city, how many laptops you need, how many tablets, who's got broadband, etc. Has there been a survey to all schools that went out to ascertain that need, Pauline?
Yeah. So we have that now from the maintained school sector, because we wanted to start with that, but then we've extended that to the academy school sector as well. But obviously we're looking at prioritising. So we have those lists which are actually quite detailed, and different schools use different things. Some use Apple, others are really interested in tablets, still interested in laptops. Others have been specific about other aspects of kit that they might want, like printers, headsets, and so on. So we've actually got those listed, so we'd be able to move on the first batch of those if we alongside the SEND priority and the disadvantaged Key Stage 1 priority children.
Okay, thank you, Pauline. But now, before I hand over to the floor, there was a couple of more questions. Now, I did contact people from 6 different schools from around the city, and to be fair, it seems a bit of a mixed bag. Some are fine, some aren't, and it does make me wonder whether there are communications issue somewhere along the line. But was some of the common themes that were coming through that were quite common were year 3 and under, where there seems to be nothing coming through the system, which I think you've just addressed, that there was nothing for that. And that's fantastic if the council is going to step in and ensure. Is the council also going to ensure that it's age appropriate, i.e. whether it's a tablet or whether it's...
Yes, I think what we would do is that's right. We would follow the school's lead, because schools have software and ways of working with their children where they might have a preference. So it might be different. So I think we'll be asking the schools to cost out their needs, itemize it, and then we wouldn't purchase the equipment, because that's just a really slow and laborious way of doing it. We would actually fund the schools directly. That is the most effective and efficient way to award a grant to the schools, and they will then make sure it fits with, you know, the way they want remote learning to work and the rest of their kit. And, you know, like I say, one school might be a completely Apple school, others you know, have different kinds of approaches, and we don't want to enforce anything on them.
Would that also encompass access to home broadband? Because I know internet access seems to be a particular issue. In relation to how many children have got one in one household, for instance. I know these families that have perhaps been given two because they've got two children or whatever, and they actually only needed one, and that's absolutely fine. But I think there's also concerns where a family's got several children, say one or two of them are doing the GCSEs, so the younger child within the primary stage is actually getting no learning because they haven't individually got any equipment. Will that be addressed as part of this?
Yeah, I mean, the schools are identifying the families in need, and as I said, if we can cover the key stage 1, that's the rationale for that, because people have tended to prioritise the older children. But again, we do expect the schools to know by this time, you know, almost a year on, they should really know the children who are not, you know, haven't got access to connectivity or devices, and to be able to work with us on that. So I'm confident that we will, you know, we will get that to the right children.
Okay, any questions from the floor? I'll open up to the floor.
Chair, if that's all right.
Yeah, Councillor Hazelgrave.
Good evening, Pauline.
Good evening, and Paul, of course, is involved in the steering group. I forgot to say. But...
yeah, but you know, a good kind of snapshot of where we are, and it does. I mean, obviously, it's not in your hands, but it does seem to me that the government's been very, very slow at delivering. You know, at this, and it is really, really important. And I'm glad we're plugging the gap in terms of the younger children, because I mean, for those particularly young ones, I mean, their literacy through phonics, you know, it does need hands-on, and you can teach it remotely. I'm sure it's happening day in, day out, very imaginatively by teachers, but the kids have got to participate, otherwise they stand still. And the younger you, I mean, I think you'd agree with me, I'm not a primary expert by any means, but I think the younger you start, the better your outcome is, and the easier you pick it up. Your brain's more plastic and fluid and receptive to things.
Yeah, that's right, Paul. And, you know, we do want to maintain those high standards that we've achieved in phonics, where we've gone above the national average for the first time really in years in things. And also really to recognise that very young children are very IT savvy. You know, you don't want them, a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old on a laptop all day, but certainly by the time they get to 7, you'd have to need an increasing amount, and they can access a lot of the curriculum through that. And also, it's not just it's the engagement with others, isn't it, and the interaction with their teacher if it's a remote situation.
It's being able to remotely take part in the class and see each other and all that kind of thing. And it's a big motivator as well. They're not on their own. You know, they may be sitting in the house, and they may be the only one of that age in the house. You know, but they're working with other kids, and they're getting on with it, and presumably everything's going well and people look happy. You know, it's a motivator.
Yeah, they're having fun as well. We can vouch for that.
Okay, any more questions from anybody? No. Can we just clarify then, Pauline? So are you saying there'll be a funding package for equipment for individual schools once they state what their needs are in relation?
Yes, well, we've got to decide on the priorities, so that's coming to the next steering group. And if we agree there's a SEND priority, and then there's the Key Stage 1 priority, whatever's left out of that would then go to the priority families in the rest of the year groups. And the likelihood is I think we would have to recommend that we start with council maintained schools, but of course, you know, we just don't know what that amount will be, but certainly we've got enough intelligence to, you know, to meet the need that schools have listed already. And some of it is not very much. I mean, some of them it's just a couple of items. Others have requested more.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions? No. Can we move over to the recommendations then? So recommendation 2.1 to consider the presentation, 2.2 to make further comments or recommendations following discussions on the presentation received. Now there's only one recommendation I would like to propose, and that's that we bring it back to the board, that it comes back to scrutiny to see how that is progressing later on. Probably not the next meeting, but the one after that. So it'll be the first meeting of the municipal year to see how that is progressing, if we're all happy with that.
Yeah, I fully agree with that recommendation. I wonder if it's worth having a recommendation around exploring how all these laptops that have been disseminated can be built into the school's curriculum, so that they're not just lying about when the kids go back to school, and there is, you know, some way it can be compensatory in terms of lost schooling during the previous year.
That's right. Well, you bring us to the idea of catch-up, and Sir Kevin Collins has been appointed as the catch-up commissioner nationally, and I'm going to approach him to say that Derby's happy to be a pilot on that, and if, you know, there's likely to be IT requirements for catch-up, so I think you know, there'll be quite a long legacy to this work.
And then it becomes proactive rather than reactive. This has all been reactive. I mean, it's been done really well, but, you know, sort of patchily sometimes and a bit slowly from the government. But, you know, by the time we've got all these rolled out, we don't want all the kids going back to school and the stuff's just lying there.
Yeah, we can actually make this contribute to an even better curriculum offer. I think it will end up in the long term.
I agree. Yeah. Good.
Absolutely. I think it's an absolute travesty that a year on we still have children and young people with no equipment in Derby City. So I thank you all for the fantastic work that you're doing. So can we just clarify on that recommendation that you'd like to put forward then, Councillor Heselgrave?
I've not thought of a wording, but just that the board would be interested in how the rollout process is developed when full schooling returns. Keep it open-ended.
Right, okay, we're all happy with that then? Yep. Take silence as agreement? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So, okay, thanks. Right, so moving on now. So it's the work programme and topic review. Now, as you're all aware, we had a work review topic working group meeting scheduled for January. However, that was unfortunately cancelled, and it was held on the 11th of February. Thank you to the councillors that did attend that session. It was very much welcomed. Thank you very much for your time and for coming along to that. We will be having one, because the session was cancelled in January. We will be holding another working group meeting, so a date will be going out in due course this week sometime for that. So if we're all happy then with that.
Chair, I don't know, is it worth trying to make sure that people who are co-opted to the meeting, to the board, can also get access if they wish, so that they've got an invitation?
Absolutely.
Because we went on the Teams, I think, didn't we? We went on something fairly accessible like Teams.
We did go on Teams. I think we were invited, Councillor Heselgrave.
Oh, good. It's a bit difficult for people for all of us.
Mayor and did attend. So
I remember they were there. Yeah, that was great.
So there were people there. So that's fine. No problem with that. So, right, I think that's it then. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for attending this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll see you at the next meeting.
Cheerio. Bye.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Karen, could you end the broadcast?